Governor, thank you for joining us. I know you have been talking about economic development lately. I know you've had AWS in Madison County, the battery cell plant in Marshall County, of course, Aluminum Dynamics in the Golden Triangle. I want to do a deep dive on the AWS project because when I hear economic development in Mississippi, I don't normally think of tech jobs. Is that particular project, is that a one-off, or do you see that as a catalyst for other tech jobs coming to Mississippi?
Well, I think you're exactly right. I think you've hit the nail on the head, and that's one of the reasons that while the $10 billion that AWS has committed to invest in central Mississippi is a major deal in and of itself. But the reality is what makes it so special is exactly what you just mentioned. And that is, these are not the jobs of 50 years ago. These are the jobs for the next 50 years. And because of that, these are tech jobs. They pay 25, 30, 35% more than the average state wage. And they also require an education level that is incredibly important, and that's something that we think we have an opportunity in the future because of the way we are positioned to take advantage of building on this particular announcement. Because you look around the country, AWS has really 3 major hubs around the country before they moved to Madison, Mississippi, and that's Northern Virginia, just south of Washington, D.C. It's Columbus, Ohio. It's Portland, Oregon, and now Madison, Mississippi. And so it's not necessarily the types of companies that you automatically expect to be choosing Mississippi. And I think that speaks significantly well about some of the processes that we've put in place and the vision that we have for improving our educational attainment level, for having readily available sites, and making sure that these large companies with large investments have the power needs to meet their demands.
Would the growth in those types of jobs primarily be in central Mississippi, or could you see it going beyond that, maybe whether North Mississippi, Southwest, Pine Belt, Gulf Coast?
Well, I think you're going to see the opportunities for those types of jobs all over the state. Obviously, this is the first foray when it comes to a major one of the 5 largest companies in the world with Amazon. But look, the reality is a lot of the jobs that we're announcing these days have tech components. The battery manufacturer, for instance, that you mentioned earlier in Marshall County, this is not your manufacturing floor of 20 years ago. The reality is it's very mechanized. There's going to be a significant number of employees in there that are working on the computers. There's no doubt that they're also going to require a lot of engineering jobs. There's going to be a lot of coordination between Amplify, which is the name of the joint venture, and the University of Mississippi, Mississippi State, our community colleges. And so really these jobs, even in the manufacturing space, are no longer just about how hard can you work and how long can you stay. It's really about brain capacity and brain availability, and that's one of the reasons that these companies are choosing Mississippi, is because we've made so much progress in terms of education.
I want to circle back to a news conference that I know you're familiar with, I'm pretty sure you are, that the state's transportation commissioners had back in April about funding. And one of the things that Northern District Commissioner John Caldwell said in that news conference was he contended that the state is losing out on economic development projects because there's not enough money going toward capacity on the state's highways. And I haven't had a chance to ask you or the Lieutenant Governor, House Speaker, anybody about that. Agree, disagree? What's your response to that?
Well, I will tell you, I think capacity projects are important. One of the reasons I'm in North Mississippi today is because we did announce one of the new capacity projects in Tippah County, where we are 4-laning Highway 15 from basically the county line, the Union Tippah County line north of Ripley. But Highway 15 needs to be 4-lane all the way to the state line, quite frankly. And it's those capacity projects, particularly that are strategically selected, where you're seeing business and industry invest and hire more people. It's not just about the companies being able to move their products to the market more quickly. It's also about moving individuals to and from jobs, so that everybody that's in North Mississippi can choose where they want to live and then choose where they're going to work, and know that they have an easy, safe pathway to get there. So I'm a supporter of additional capacity projects. There was a time, it was mentioned this morning, that the previous Transportation Commission shut down all new capacity projects. The current commission has restarted that. The legislature, I proposed $1.2 billion in new capacity projects about a year and a half ago. The legislature's funded about 80 or 90% of that, almost $1 billion. We've got the largest budget for MDOT in our state's history, $1.6 billion this year. So the combination of an additional $1 billion that was garnered by our federal delegation, in addition to the $1 billion in money that the state has put up in the last couple of years, we have restarted capacity. Now, what Commissioner Caldwell and my other friends on the commission will argue for is they want a dedicated revenue source, whatever that may look like. And I think certainly there's going to be conversations surrounding that. I'm going to be against raising anybody's taxes, but there is certainly a way for us to take existing revenue sources and prioritize infrastructure, because after all, infrastructure is a core function of government. Government does a lot of things that maybe government ought not do. Government does some things that they're not very good at, but we can all agree, I think, that infrastructure, whether it's water or sewer or roads and bridges, are core functions of government, and we need to be talking about how do we allocate a higher percentage of those revenues to go to those core functions.
Let's look ahead to the 25th legislative session. I know in previous sessions you have pitched for a total elimination of state income or personal income tax. You haven't made any headway on that. I know that the Lieutenant Governor in Neshoba recently said now's the time to reduce the grocery tax. What are you going to pitch to lawmakers when January 25 runs around?
Yeah, so what I would tell you is we have made some progress on the elimination of the income tax. We haven't made enough progress on the full elimination.
Sure.
We have eliminated the 3% individual income tax bracket when I was Lieutenant Governor. We have now have a path over the next 2 years to eliminate the 5% bracket. So now we only have one bracket. It's the 4% bracket, and we have the highest starting rate. So the first 34,000 of income for a married couple is taxed at 0%, and everything above that is taxed at 4%. So of the 50 states, there are 9 that have no income tax, and of the 41 that have an income tax, Mississippi now has the 5th lowest in America. And so we've made some progress, but I think we ought to make more progress, and I'm going to continue pushing for that. I believe if you want more of something, you ought to tax it less, and we ought to be looking towards taxing income less. Now, when it comes to the grocery tax, I'll just be perfectly honest with you and tell you, you're never going to get a tax cut to my desk that I'm not supportive of. I think that letting people keep more of their money is a good thing. But the better thing for our economy long term is to lower the income tax, because that helps attract not only new capital investment and more jobs, it helps us attract more people. The reality is we have the lowest unemployment rate in state history. We have more people working today than any time in our state's history, but we have the lowest unemployment rate, which tells you that there are a lot of jobs out there that need people. We need to see our population trends continuing to go up, not down, and that's something that we're going to continue to work towards. And I do believe that when you look at population growth in the Southeast, guess which 3 states are leading the charge? It's Texas, Tennessee, Florida, and they all have something in common, and that is they have 0% income tax. People are flocking there. Mississippi's made a decision some 30 years ago not to tax retirement income. And guess what? We are one of the top 5 or 6 places in America, even by all the national pundits that don't always say good things about Mississippi. They will tell you that Mississippi is one of the best 5 places in America for retirees, and that's because of that policy decision that's been made. I believe it's good enough for retirement income, and I'll be good enough for income. I think we'd have more people here, and I think we'd have more people with resources that are then reinvesting back in our community.
So your argument is if you get rid of the income tax entirely, you attract enough people and you don't run into the situation where you don't have enough revenue to fund basic government.
Well, let's just go back to when I initially proposed doing away with the individual income tax. At that time, our state budget was $5.8 billion. That's how much state money we were spending, and we are going to collect close to $7.8 billion in this particular fiscal year. We've seen tremendous revenue growth, and so we honestly could have gotten rid of the income tax had we convinced our legislature to keep spending at that $5.8 billion level. Now, they've steadily increased it over the last 5 years. They've made choices to spend recurring revenue on things that sure individually could be argued for, but I will tell you, I really do believe that if we had no individual income tax, our economy would grow at a rate much faster than it's currently growing, even though it's growing faster today than it ever has before.
We are 90 days from the presidential election. I don't think it's any surprise to anybody who you were supporting in the election, but I want to get your take on the election as it stands now in regards to a couple of governors who've been in the news as of late. Obviously, Tim Walz, the Democratic governor of Minnesota, is the vice presidential nominee for the Democrats. I don't know if you have dealt with him, whether through the National Governors Association or in any other capacity. And yeah, you're not on the same side politically, but what can you tell us about him and your thought about him being on the Democratic ticket?
Well, first of all, I'll say this. I think having a governor on the ticket is a good thing. I think that governors do have to run states. And when you have to run something, unlike, say, some of the individuals in the legislative branch, that has an advantage when you are in high office in the executive branch. The problem with Governor Walz from Minnesota is that he is perhaps the most liberal governor in the entire country, which is not surprising because Kamala Harris was voted as the most liberal United States senator in the United States Senate when she represented California in that capacity. And so Kamala Harris chose to pick a candidate that would govern most like her, which is someone who would govern from the far left. And I think more than anything else, that's what the people in Mississippi and the people across America need to know, is that if you want Mississippi to be more like California, everything from the crime that you're seeing in those larger cities to the homelessness that you're seeing in those larger cities, the far left approaches that they take to governing, then Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are your people. If that's what you want. If you want conservative leadership, if you want someone who has a record running the country, then Donald Trump is your candidate. The reality is people in Mississippi and across America know what they paid for gasoline when Donald Trump was president, and they know what they're paying now with this new administration. People across Mississippi and across America know when they went to the grocery store how much they were paying for bread and milk when Donald Trump was president, and they know how much they're paying today. Prices are up 25, 30, 35% across the board on so many items that are essential, and it's just harder to make ends meet today. In fact, I read a statistic the other day that in Joe Biden's America, close to 2 in 3 Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's the highest number ever in American history. And that's because of this. It's a conscious decision by Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and I think will continue to be enacted when Tim Walz is, if he were to be vice president, you would see those prices to continue to rise because these are policy decisions that the Biden-Harris administration have made.
I want to ask you about what happened over the weekend in Atlanta. Former President Trump speaking there, and he attacks a very popular Republican governor, Brian Kemp, attacks the First Lady, attacks the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. You've been in a couple of competitive races for governor, okay? It's widely known Georgia is an important state, maybe not as much as Pennsylvania, but it's a big deal. And there were Republicans Saturday night who were saying, what are you doing? And I've read some comments saying that if former President Trump loses Georgia, it's going to circle back to what he did at that rally Saturday. You're sitting over here. I know you're aware of it. What's your take on all that?
Well, I know Brian Kemp. I know him well, and he's a good, strong, conservative governor of Georgia, and he's someone who has won Georgia not once but twice. And I believe strongly that you win future elections through addition, not through subtraction. And I think President Trump is going to win Georgia this year. I think Governor Kemp will be supportive of that. In fact, has even said that in the aftermath. What I hope that our candidates up and down the ticket will focus on this year is the record of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because that record is one that has led to record high inflation, record high prices. It's the reason that Mississippi and America are no longer energy independent. These are all policy decisions. The so-called Inflation Reduction Act that passed the Congress that really just unbridled spending, which led to higher and higher gas prices and higher bread and milk prices. That's really what I think we all as Republicans need to focus on in 2024, whether you're running for school board or for President of the United States. We should focus on the record because it's a very bad one, and I think the vast majority of Americans know that, and that's what we should be talking about.
I know we're tight on time. I do want to try to wrap up talking about your future. Now, you're not going anywhere tomorrow. You did say it in the show, but last year you thought, that the last year's election was it for you as far as running for public office. And there are already people, we're 3 years away, but we're already getting those signals. You have preference who takes your place?
What I would tell you is this. Serving as the 65th governor of Mississippi has been truly the honor of my professional life. My advice to everyone that's thinking about running for governor, particularly those that are in elected office, is the same advice my very first boss taught me. He said, Tate, it appears to me that you're young and bright and aggressive and maybe ambitious, and here's what you need to know. The best thing that you can do to either keep your current job or to get a promotion is actually one and the same, and that is to do your current job well. And so I'm going to focus on being the best governor I can be for the next 3.5 years, and I hope that everyone that was just elected to office some 6 months or so ago will focus on being the best they can be at whatever job they currently have. And I think 2027 is going to bring a lot of opportunities, and the good thing is I'm hopeful we're able to have a policy debate about who can bring the best conservative governance to Mississippi and continue on what I believe is an unprecedented economic run for our state. More jobs than ever before, lowest unemployment than ever before. Whomever talks about job creation and job growth and improving the quality of our educational attainment levels, that's who ultimately is going to be successful in an election. But the best way to show that you can be successful and actually do that is to do your current job well.
Final question. I know you and the First Lady have talked about what do we do after we're done here. So what are we going to see from the two of you after elective office is?
Well, we haven't spent a lot of time thinking and talking about it because we have a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 12-year-old, and they keep us really busy with sports, whether it's basketball or soccer. I tell everybody, I do two things right now in life. I work and I watch my kids play sports, but admittedly not necessarily in that order. But what I would tell you is, I had a great career in the private sector before I ran for public office. My wife still works in the private sector, and I have no idea what the future holds, but I look forward to the opportunities that may present themselves once I move beyond this governor's office.
Governor, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.